Hey guys, Aki Murasaki here. Today I have a bit of censorship news. Some games, unfortunately, recently are being barred from access to the Steam store. They are not being released, and lots of Japanese developers are looking for alternative ways to get their games published. We have 5 titles today, if I calculated correctly. The first one is Love R Kiss Endless Memories, who was being under review on Steam recently. Unfortunately, it is not going to be published on Steam. Instead, as you can see here from the screenshot, it is going to be published on both GOG and DLsite, which is also mentioned here in the announcement. Just to highlight here, since the 30th of October, Japanese time, since the 30th of October, the end of the day, so basically since the 31st of October, it's going to be officially kind of announced on GOG and also on DLsite is currently according to preparations, and they're going to announce it when kind of they have more information. Just to mention, the reason why I'm not using show translation, where I'm not doing the auto translation, sometimes it just garbles the text. It's better to translate it yourself manually. I think that makes a little more sense since I'm able to do this. This is the first game, and yes, as you can see here, they did announce that it's going to be available on GOG, on Good Old Games. Big win for Good Old Games, and a massive L for Steam once again, unfortunately. What is this game about? What is Love R Kiss Endless Memories about? So you're basically a member of the photography club, and you're supposed to meet and romance a lot of different girls and take their photos. Now, you might think this is a little weird, but I should not be the one talking since I've been reincarnated as a porcelain doll. Definitely not in a position to speak about things like this. But yeah, there's absolutely nothing weird. Well, there's nothing, let's say, illegal or highly inappropriate about this game. You might not like it, but it's not something that should not be available on Steam. It basically is very similar to a number of other games, a number of other, let's say, visual novels that are already available on Steam. It's not going to be there. It's going to be on Good Old Games, as I mentioned. And if you're using other platforms, then eventually also on DLsite. But we have more titles. We have, for instance, here, Matt, a translator here on Twitter, writes, Valve's war on Japanese game is ramping up this month. Inti creates, that's the company, hit trouble with Madogami, which should have released yesterday. I'm gonna mention a little later. And then there's also Kodansha's, yes, that Kodansha's, Hamukoi, which is basically a kind of visual movie adventure, visual novel. What am I even saying? It's basically a movie visual novel. If you've seen some of these, they're basically using live footage, so they're not even animated, but they're basically like snippets of short movies patched together into scenes, and it's just like a standard, I would say, Japanese visual novel where you play as a hamster. And here's kind of the main page of the game. There are some scenes that are a little saucy, so I'm not going to be showing them here, but just to read the description here. Oh no, impossible. You've been reincarnated as a hamster. The main character has been reincarnated as a hamster, and the thing is that they're going to be experiencing in the game is being fed, taking baths, sleeping together, and we have these 3 girls. The one from the right, that one's the oldest one as far as I remember. Then we have the middle one, which wants to become a ballerina, and the one to the left, the youngest shy one. Just to mention, all of them are of age. This is nothing to do with teenagers, if anyone's asking. But it is quite saucy, and it's kind of like, it's weird. Okay, the main character reincarnated as a hamster is definitely on the weirder side, but in terms of like what different other kind of visual games are available out there, probably not the weirdest I've seen. Still, no reason why this game should not be available on Steam. And it won't be, unfortunately. It will probably be available somewhere else. I'm guessing DMM, DLsite, maybe some other, strictly Japanese website where indie developers, indie publishers publish their games. And then we have another one, this one covered by Automaton. This is a online magazine that's kind of like Japanese/English. Many of the articles are published in English, but are written actually by either Japanese people or in collaboration with Japanese people. They have like a very strong presence in Japan and very often report on like gaming, media-related news. And they also have 2 accounts on Twitter, one strictly Japanese with Japanese news and one English-speaking with kind of like, I'm guessing, the translations or simply kind of the more Western-facing news. And so we have this this article here by Yokoyama Keiichi, and he does mention that the game Age 9, which is basically kind of horror game, and it's kind of like an Inception sort of game because it's a game about a game. It's about a cancelled Bishoujo game, as you see here. And it's basically, again, a visual novel. The cancelled Bishoujo game is called Tokimeki Strip Janken, which is basically a strip version of rock, paper, scissors. That's the game itself here, as you can see. The game in the game, that's the Bishoujo game being mentioned. And the main game is basically a horror adventure game. So I guess less of a visual novel, more like a horror adventure game. But this one, again, is not going to be published on Steam. Instead, it is going to be available on, again, Big Win, GOG, DLsite, DMM, and Stove, something I've never heard of. But it's also going to be available there on November the 30th. Again, Big Win for GOG, Big L for Steam, once again. And here we have some news from Kurushita Zenko, who is, I would say, kind of like the Japanese correspondent in a way, because he does write a lot in English and talks to a lot of English-speaking people in the West, especially content creators, and kind of, relays information, as far as I'm not to the Japanese government, but to the Diet, and does discuss he does bring up stuff to Japanese politicians internally. I could be misremembering, but I think he's a local representative. So not exactly a national scale, but still he does make people in Japan aware that certain products of Japanese pop culture are being censored in the West, and that's not great because no one fundamentally wants this. So he reposted here about Majougami, the Witch of Lulididia, that was being scheduled to be released at the end of October on Steam. Unfortunately, there are delays in the Steam release review process, and very likely is not going to be, eventually might fail. I mean, fingers crossed, I don't want to jinx it, but there is a possibility might not be published, or might quote-unquote fail the release process, and therefore might simply be pulled from Steam. And yeah, here he says, this game described as a new concept girl/action game, no idea, featuring a protagonist who appears to be a young girl, raises concern about a possible connection, as in the character looks too young, even if they are 18, they are looking too young. If young girls or those who appear to be young girls are targeted, regardless of whether they contain sexual content, many more games will likely become victims in the future. And yes, the policy, and this is interesting, the policy change made in July to prohibit anything not approved by payment providers may also be having an impact. That is a possibility, but I would rather say not really. Because issues like this have actually been happening way more in the past as well. And this is not a new problem. This is fundamentally not a new problem. There's been a lot of indie developers who have been suffering from the weird and uneven review process in Steam. And very often what is being given as a reason is that there are female characters and they look too young. So even if they are not real, they look too young, which is going to be the case in the majority of kind of like anime style games, regardless of the genre. Even if you age up the characters kind of I would say artificially, I guess, and you set all of their ages as like 18 or 20 something, or in general you have a cast of older characters, as long as they look too young, they might be failed in the review process. And also the review process is only partially, from what I've seen in the past, is only partially automatic. So the initial stages might be automated, might be handled by AI, which then processes, I guess, the screenshots from the promo material. Again, I'm going on a limb here, okay? I'm not 100% sure, but from what I've seen from the screenshots people have posted, that the early stages might be automated. You provide information about the game, you provide the marketing material, the screenshots, and that the game might pass these, for instance, but then eventually gets to a manual approval by someone, and that person may or may not approve the product. And I'm gonna later show you why exactly are people complaining about this. This is not merely because these games are being rejected, but it's also because some games are being rejected and some games are being approved. And the games that are just like outright mature 18 plus and do actually contain sexual content, many of these are somehow approved, even if they're cartoon games, even if they are anime games and they show young looking characters. Some of them get approved, some of them don't. So the process is entirely inconsistent and is very problematic and painful for indie developers who, are working tirelessly on the game, and eventually they want to reach a broader audience on Steam, and then they get rejected at the last stage or towards the last stages of the release process, and it's just not fair, And there's more games like this. There's this one, for instance, from a Western studio, from Aftermath Z Games. They're talking about, it's again an indie studio, and they are mentioning exactly why their stuff has not been approved. And yeah, so the other problem that is being kind of pointed out here is that even if you express goodwill and give the reviewers the benefit of the doubt, sometimes the review process comes back, the report comes back in like a very misleading way. Like sometimes they don't give the reason. Sometimes they say that, the game contains elements that don't agree with our policies, and they're not being specific. And sometimes you need to figure out yourself. You need to, guess why exactly the game was rejected. But with this one here, with Aftermath, they've been given a precise reason, and the problem was this. The problem was their marketing material, yes. Because it features a character in a swimsuit, in a one-piece swimsuit, which is weird. Okay, it's a horror game. This is being added to kind of elevate the horror element. This is also new as a concept because horror games have always, to some extent, walked the line between kind of like sexual and titillating and being just like outright horror, gruesome and containing blood and gore. That has always been a thing. So this is, for horror games, not a new concept. So I'm not surprised they are doing this. It's always good to kind of like make the experience more visceral. Absolutely agreed. But they're saying that this image from their promo material is no good. They need to censor it. And yeah, again, this image is now classed as too mature according to Steam. Too mature. So you can have gore, you can have blood, you can have dismemberment, and that is somehow okay. But this image here, which is not even like overly sexual, I guess, it's just a character in a swimsuit, this is too much for Steam. That is absolutely wild if this is the response that Steam gave. If this is their assessment, that is completely ridiculous. And as Aftermath Z Game mentions here, they would need to, so we can not have the page ready in time for the event, and would need to censor marketing screenshot. So basically they would need to redo all of the marketing material to even manage with the release process. Maybe there are some deadlines involved. They are mentioning an event, so I'm guessing specifically for some kind of upcoming event. And yes, as they write here, we could have all remade and hope they accept it. There is no guarantee that they will. That's the whole point, right? Because they're saying, okay, this image is a problem, but then they remove it and replace it with something a little less sensual, and then is it going to be approved or is it going to be rejected again? But where will it stop? We would need to redo the networking too if we move platform. But do we really want to censor the game? We do not. And I completely agree with this. They should be platforms that, and by the way, Steam is a platform like this. Steam fundamentally does support adult content. They have a process for this. They have categories for this. They have the internal age, voluntary of course, but they do have the age verification system where you need to declare that you are 18 plus, or well, you have to give your birthday basically, which is then used to calculate that you're 18 plus or 16 or whatever, that you qualify to view the store page of a game based on the appropriate age restriction. And I think I might be misremembering, but I think at starting at 16 plus, you are then shown this prompt with the not age verification, but with the birth date verification. You are kind of given this prompt, and there are also reasons very often given why exactly this game requires an age check. But yeah, what other platform would work here? Then in this case, I am guessing that would be GOG again. Okay, so I've checked GOG. They don't have their game published there as in, coming soon or whatever yet. That is completely okay. As you can see here, they're also asking for alternatives. It might be even that Western developers are going to move to platforms like DMM or DLsite and maybe kind of find a way for the platform to also support Western indie developers. That would be a very interesting venture, I think. But for the time being, these guys are kind of stuck. So the other games have options because they're Japanese games. So even if they don't go to Steam, they can always go to DLsite, which is way more popular with Japanese indie games. Not surprised here though, or even DMM or Stove, as has been mentioned. I had no idea that GOG specifically is so common as like an alternative platform for some games that Steam decides are too risk. I had no idea that this is the case, but if you look for like anime games, they do have a lot of visual novels, for instance, on GOG. So if you're interested in getting like a DRM free and also kind of like more customer friendly publisher and online platform, GOG is definitely the place to go. I really like them. I did buy a couple of games from them in the past, but nowadays it's mostly Steam because many of the gacha games that come to PC actually do release primarily on Steam, so maybe not surprising. But yeah, I definitely can recommend GOG if you're not using them often enough. I do recommend switching to GOG even if you have the option, to show that you are supporting like more open, uncensored publishing of games and not actively supporting censorship. That is basically my 2 cents on this topic, and kind of sharing this image I really liked from Aftermath, that eventually they just like, no guys, if you're being mean, we're also going to be mean, and they basically show what apparently is approved and what apparently is not approved on Steam. So Femboy and Fuda House, that is totally okay with Steam. As with Hitler here, that is apparently also okay. Not only part 1, but part 1 and 2, totally approved. Amazing games to host on Steam. But if there is a girl in a swimsuit, that's a no-go. That's an absolute no-go. Should not be happening. Yeah, the hypocrisy is kind of hilarious here. But this also highlights a problem that might actually be newer, and that is that the review process on existing games is separate from the review process on incoming games, and they might be stricter now with games that are going to be published on Steam, and they might be cracking down on new games first before they ramp up and start cleaning up the platform itself. I don't know, I don't have any evidence for that, but that would be my guess. Whether it's true, it's unclear. And please don't flag these games to right here simply because maybe your favorite game didn't get published. That is not the way to go. As Steam has always been a more customer-friendly platform, they did go out of their way, fight for the good guy very often, so I don't agree to any censorship of this kind. But yeah, that's basically for me, guys. Lots of updates, as you can see. If you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe, and I see you guys in the next one. Mata ne!